Part 1. Arrival in the Heart of the Wild West. In the untamed expanses of Arizona Territory in the 1880s, where the sun scorched the earth and the wind carried whispers of secrets, Emily Harper arrived with a heart full of dreams and a satchel of letters from a man she thought would be her future. She had crossed oceans and prairies, leaving behind the cobblestone streets of Philadelphia for the promise of love and a new life with James Thornton, a cattle rancher whose words had painted a vivid picture of a thriving homestead in the dusty town of Redstone Creek. But as the stagecoach rattled to a stop in a cloud of red dirt, Emily's dreams crumbled like the brittle earth beneath her feet. James Thornton was dead, buried just days before her arrival, and the town she had hoped would welcome her was a cauldron of greed, betrayal, and hidden truths. Emily clutched her worn leather satchel, her only anchor in this foreign land, as she stepped onto the main street of Redstone Creek. The town was a patchwork of weathered wooden buildings, a general store, a saloon with swinging doors, a bank with barred windows, and a scattering of shops that seemed to cling to survival. It was nothing like the bustling avenues of Philadelphia, where gas lamps lit the night and street vendors called out their wares. Yet there was a raw, rugged charm to Redstone Creek, a sense that life here was carved from the very bones of the earth. Miss Harper, a wiry man in a faded suit, approached, his face lined with the weight of hard years. His eyes were kind but shadowed with unease. "I'm Samuel Grayson, owner of Grayson's Mercantile and the town's postmaster. I'm afraid I have some terrible news." Emily's heart sank, her gloved hand tightening around her satchel. "What is it, Mr. Grayson? Is he all right?" Grayson removed his hat, twisting it in his hands. "I'm so sorry, Miss Harper. Mr. Thornton passed away 4 days ago. Pneumonia, they say. We buried him on the hill just yesterday." The world tilted beneath Emily's feet, and she swayed, her vision blurring. Grayson reached out to steady her, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm sorry, miss. We didn't know you were already on your way, or we'd have sent word." 4 days, Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. 4 days ago she had been on a train, rereading James's letters, imagining their first meeting. If only the journey had been faster, if the stagecoach hadn't been delayed in Kansas City. "Do you have family back east to return to?" Grayson asked, his tone cautious. Emily shook her head, the reality of her situation crashing over her like a desert storm. She had resigned her position as a seamstress in Philadelphia, sold her few possessions to fund this journey. Her parents had passed years ago, and her only sister was married and living in Oregon, their correspondence rare. "No," she said softly. "There's nothing for me to go back to." Grayson shifted uncomfortably. "Well, we can arrange for you to stay at Mrs. Callahan's boarding house for a few days while you figure things out. She's a good woman, though her rates are modest." "I can pay," Emily said quickly, though she knew her funds were dwindling. She had expected to step into a marriage, a home, not to be stranded in a strange town with no one to turn to. "There's also the matter of Mr. Thornton's property," Grayson continued, his voice lowering. "His ranch, the cattle. There are some complications." "Complications?" Emily asked, her brow furrowing. Before Grayson could explain, a commotion erupted across the street. The saloon doors burst open, and a burly man with a tangled beard stumbled out, followed by another man shouting, "You think you can just take Thornton's land now that he's gone, Malone? The bank's got the first claim, and you know it." "That land was promised to me," the bearded man, Malone, roared back. "Thornton owed me for bailing him out last summer." Grayson sighed, shaking his head. "I'm sorry you had to see that, Miss Harper." James Thornton's death has stirred up a hornet's nest in Redstone Creek. Let's continue this inside. He led her into the mercantile, a spacious store filled with shelves of canned goods, bolts of fabric, and tools gleaming in the dim light. At the back was a small office where Grayson offered her a seat and a cup of tea. As Emily sipped the warm liquid, she tried to gather her scattered thoughts. James was gone. Her future, her hopes, her plans, all dust in the wind. "Miss Harper," Grayson began, sitting across from her. "James Thornton was well liked here, but his finances were tangled. He borrowed heavily from the bank to expand his herd, but last year's drought wiped out half his cattle. He never mentioned any troubles in his letters to you." Emily shook her head. "No. His letters were hopeful. He wrote about the ranch, the house he was building, our future together." Grayson nodded sympathetically. Men don't like to burden their intended with such worries. The trouble is, with his passing, several folks think they've got a claim to his ranch. The bank holds the mortgage. Patrick Malone, the man you saw outside, claims James promised him land for help during the drought. And there are others. "What about me?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "As his intended wife, don't I have some claim?" Grayson's expression grew pained. "Without a formal marriage, I'm afraid the law doesn't recognize your position. Unless James left a will, naming you specifically." "I see," Emily said, her voice small. The weight of her isolation pressed down on her. She had no legal standing, no allies, no means to fight for what she had come here to claim. "If you need work while you sort things out," Grayson offered, "my wife could use help in the store. It's not much, but it'd give you some income." The kindness in his offer was genuine, but it only underscored the precariousness of her situation. "Thank you, Mr. Grayson. I'll consider it. For now, I'd like to get settled at the boarding house." "Of course," Grayson said, rising. "Mrs. Callahan's place is just down the street, the white house with the green shutters. I'll have your trunks sent over." As Emily left the mercantile, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the dusty street. Redstone Creek no longer felt like the gateway to a new life, but a labyrinth of danger and uncertainty. She was halfway to the boarding house when the sound of hoofbeats made her turn. A lone rider approached, his silhouette sharp against the fading light. His dark hair was tied back, his skin bronzed by the sun, and he sat tall in the saddle of a sleek chestnut horse. As he drew closer, Emily saw his features: high cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes so deep they seemed to hold the secrets of the desert itself. There was a hardness in those eyes, a wariness that made her take a step back. "Miss Harper." His voice was low, resonant, like the rumble of distant thunder. "Yes," she replied, startled. "How do you know my name?" "Redstone Creek's a small town," he said, dismounting with a fluid grace. "Word travels fast. I'm Caleb Stone, a rancher from the valley south of here." "Mr. Stone," Emily said, nodding politely. "Did James mention you in his letters?" A shadow crossed Caleb's face. "James Thornton and I weren't close, but we had an arrangement. I'm here because he asked me to look out for you if anything happened to him." Emily's breath caught. Why would he ask that? And why you if you weren't friends? Caleb glanced around, as if checking for eavesdroppers. "James made enemies in this town, Miss Harper. Men who'd kill for his land. His death was too sudden. Pneumonia, they say, but I saw him a week ago, fit as a fiddle. You're in danger, and I'm offering you protection." "Danger?" Emily's heart raced. "From whom?" "Men like Patrick Malone, who thinks he's owed Thornton's ranch. Or Vincent Caldwell, the banker who's been eyeing that land for years." James sent me a letter the day before he died, asking me to keep you safe. Said you were coming west to be his bride, and that he feared his enemies might not let you live long enough to claim what's yours." Emily studied the man before her. Caleb Stone was half-Navajo, his heritage evident in his features and the quiet strength he exuded. There was a hardness to him, yes, but also a flicker of honor that made her want to trust him, despite her instincts screaming caution. "What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Stone?" "I'm suggesting you come to my ranch, just for a few days. It's safer than staying in town, where every eye is on you. My housekeeper, Mrs. White Owl, lives on the property. Your reputation will be safe. We can figure out what happened to James and what it means for you." Emily hesitated. The idea of staying with a stranger, especially a man with such an enigmatic presence, was unthinkable. Yet the boarding house offered no real safety, and her funds were too limited to sustain her for long. "Mr. Stone, I appreciate your offer, but I barely know you." "It wouldn't be proper." Caleb shrugged, his expression unreadable. "It's your choice, Miss Harper. I'm just keeping a promise to a man who asked for my help." Before she could respond, a shout from down the street interrupted them. Patrick Malone, the bearded man from earlier, was striding toward them, his hand hovering near the revolver at his hip. "Stone," he bellowed. "What are you doing sniffing around Thornton's woman?" Caleb stepped slightly in front of Emily, his posture relaxed but alert. "Just being neighborly, Malone. You should try it sometime." Malone sneered, his eyes flicking to Emily. "We don't need your kind meddling in Redstone Creek, half-breed. Miss, you should know Thornton's ranch is as good as mine. The bank might hold the papers, but I've got the water rights to the creek that runs through that land. Without water, it's worthless." "Is that why you were so eager to buy it from James while he was alive?" Caleb asked coolly. "Funny how you're staking a claim now that he's dead." Malone's face reddened. "Watch your mouth, Stone, or you'll regret it." His hand twitched toward his gun, but Caleb's steady gaze held him in check. For a tense moment, the two men stared each other down. Then Malone spat on the ground and turned to Emily. "Stay away from this one, miss. He's trouble, and if you think you've got any claim to Thornton's property, think again. He died owing debts all over this county." With that, he stormed off toward the saloon. Emily's pulse pounded, the confrontation leaving her shaken. "Do you see what I mean?" Caleb said quietly. "There's something wrong about James's death, and you're caught in the middle of it." "What would you suggest I do, Mr. Stone?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "Come to my ranch. Stay until we can sort out what's going on. If you decide to leave after that, I'll escort you to the next stagecoach myself." Emily weighed her options. Stay in Redstone Creek, alone and vulnerable, with men like Malone circling like vultures. Return east with nothing but the clothes on her back. Or trust this stranger who claimed to have James's trust. None of the choices were ideal, but Caleb's offer held the promise of answers and safety, at least for now. "I need to collect my trunks," she said finally. "They are being delivered to the boarding house." Caleb nodded. "We'll stop there first. I'll wait outside while you explain to Mrs. Callahan that you've made other arrangements." As they walked toward the boarding house, the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the distant mountains, cloaking Redstone Creek in shadow. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a world far more dangerous than she had imagined. Yet there was something about Caleb Stone, a quiet strength, a steadiness, that made her believe he might be her only ally in this wild, unforgiving land. Part 2: The Ranch of Secrets. The journey to Caleb Stone's ranch took over an hour, the darkness swallowing the landscape as Emily sat beside him in his wagon, her trunk secured in the back. Redstone Creek faded into the distance, its flickering lights replaced by the vast, star-strewn sky. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the creak of the wagon wheels and the occasional call of a coyote. Emily's mind churned with questions, but she held her tongue, sensing Caleb was lost in thoughts of his own. As they crested a hill, the stone ranch came into view, nestled in a valley framed by jagged peaks. The main house was a sturdy two-story structure of timber and stone, its windows glowing faintly in the night. A barn stood nearby, flanked by smaller outbuildings and a corral where horses stirred at their approach. It was larger than Emily had expected, a testament to hard-won prosperity in a land that gave nothing easily. "It's beautiful," Emily said softly, her voice breaking the silence. Caleb glanced at her, then back at the ranch. "Took me 8 years to build it to what you see now. My father left me the land, but little else." As they drew closer, a figure emerged from the house, an older Navajo woman with silver-streaked hair braided tightly down her back. She stood on the porch, arms crossed, her expression stern but not unkind. "That's Mrs. White Owl," Caleb explained. "She's been with me since I started the ranch. Don't let her demeanor fool you. She's got a heart of gold." Caleb brought the wagon to a stop and helped Emily down. Her legs were stiff from the long journey, and she stumbled slightly, his hand catching her elbow to steady her. "Thank you," she murmured, suddenly aware of how close he was. In the moonlight, his features were sharper, his dark eyes intense yet guarded. "Mrs. White Owl," Caleb called, "this is Miss Emily Harper. She'll be staying with us for a while." The older woman's gaze swept over Emily, assessing. "The woman James Thornton sent for," she said, her voice flat but not hostile. "Yes," Emily confirmed. "Though I arrived too late." Mrs. White Owl's expression softened, just a fraction. "I'm sorry for your loss. Come inside, you must be starved and exhausted." The interior of the house was warm and welcoming, a stark contrast to the rugged exterior. The main room boasted a massive stone fireplace, sturdy oak furniture, and shelves lined with books, more books than Emily would have expected in a frontier ranch house. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a golden glow over the room. "You have quite a collection," Emily remarked, running her fingers along the spines of leather-bound volumes. "My mother's influence," Caleb said from behind her. "She was a schoolteacher back in Baltimore before she came west. Met my father when he saved her from a stagecoach robbery. They were both gone by the time I was 18. There was a raw edge to his voice, a pain that made Emily pause. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Mrs. White Owl announced supper, and they moved to a simple but elegant dining room. The meal was hearty: roast venison, cornbread, and wild greens, a far cry from the stale biscuits and jerky Emily had endured on her journey. As they ate, she gathered her courage to ask the question that had been burning in her mind. "Mr. Stone, you said James wrote to you before he died. Did he mention anything about fearing for his life?" Caleb exchanged a glance with Mrs. White Owl before answering. "Not directly. He said he'd made some choices that didn't sit well with certain folks in town. Refusing to sell his water rights to Patrick Malone was one of them. Malone's been snapping up land all over the county, but without water, it's useless for cattle. James's ranch has one of the only year-round creeks around." "And the bank," Emily pressed, remembering Grayson's mention of James's debts. "Vincent Caldwell runs the bank in Redstone Creek," Caleb said. "He and James had a history. Caldwell wanted James's land for his own reasons, something about a railroad coming through. There were rumors he was calling in loans early, putting pressure on James. So both Malone and Caldwell had reason to want James's land, Emily said, her mind racing. But surely you don't think one of them would have killed him? Men have killed for less out here, Mrs. White Owl said bluntly. Land, water, gold, they're worth more than a man's life to some. But Mr. Grayson said it was pneumonia, Emily protested, though doubt gnawed at her. Doc Harrison's the one who called it pneumonia, Caleb said. And Harrison owes Caldwell money for his practice. He'd say whatever Caldwell wants him to. The implications chilled Emily to the bone. She set down her fork, her appetite gone. What am I supposed to do? I have no claim to James's property, no way to prove anything if he was murdered, and barely enough money to get by. For now you stay here where it's safe, Caleb said firmly. Tomorrow I'll ride into town and see what I can dig up. I know people who won't lie to me, even if they're scared of Caldwell or Malone. After dinner, Mrs. White Owl showed Emily to a cozy bedroom on the second floor. The room was simple but comfortable, with a soft bed, a dresser, and a small writing desk by the window. Her trunks had already been brought up, a small comfort in the chaos of her new reality. "Thank you for your hospitality," Emily said. "I know my arrival was unexpected." Mrs. White Owl studied her for a moment. "Caleb doesn't bring people here. Ever. You must be someone special." Before Emily could respond, the older woman bid her good night and left, closing the door softly. Alone at last, Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her mind a whirlwind. Just that morning, she had been full of hope for a life with James. Now he was gone, possibly murdered, and she was in the home of a man she barely knew, a man with his own mysterious connection to her late fiancé. From her window, she could see the sprawling expanse of the stone ranch, its fields silvered by moonlight. In the distance, the dark silhouettes of mountains loomed against a sky ablaze with stars. It was a wild, untamed beauty that both thrilled and terrified her. With a sigh, Emily began unpacking her trunk, searching for her nightgown. Her fingers brushed against the bundle of letters from James, tied with a faded ribbon. She sat at the desk and untied them, rereading his words in search of any clue that he had been in danger. His letters were as she remembered, warm, thoughtful, filled with dreams of their life together. He described the ranch, the house he had built for them, the future they would share. There was no hint of fear, no mention of enemies. Yet he had written to Caleb, asking him to protect her if anything happened. Why? What had changed in the days before his death? A soft knock at the door startled her. "Miss Harper," it was Caleb. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Emily checked her appearance, then opened the door. Caleb stood in the hallway, holding a small wooden box. "I'm sorry to disturb you," he said, "but I thought you should have this tonight." He held out the box. "It was James's. He asked me to keep it safe for him a couple of weeks ago. Said if anything happened to him, it should go to you." Emily took the box with trembling hands. It was the size of a book, crafted from polished cedar with a brass latch. "Did he say what was inside?" Caleb shook his head. "Only that it contained something that might protect you if he couldn't." Her heart raced. "Thank you, Mr. Stone." Caleb nodded, hesitating as if he wanted to say more. "Good night, Miss Harper. Try to rest. Tomorrow could be a long day." After he left, Emily returned to the desk and opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of blue velvet, was a folded document, a small leather pouch, and a note in James's handwriting. She unfolded the document first, a deed to James Thornton's ranch, dated 3 weeks ago, transferring ownership to Emily Harper, my intended wife. Her breath caught. According to this, she owned the ranch. But Grayson had said she had no legal claim without a marriage. Why hadn't he mentioned this deed? Next, she opened the pouch. Inside was a simple gold ring and a note. My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, then my worst fears have come true, and I am no longer here to welcome you as I planned. I have made enemies in Redstone Creek, men who will stop at nothing to take what is mine. I have transferred the deed to the ranch to your name and entrusted this box to Caleb Stone, the only man I trust in these parts. The ring was my mother's. I had hoped to place it on your finger myself. If fate has decided otherwise, know that in my heart you were already my wife. Be careful who you trust in Redstone Creek. Caleb Stone may seem a hard man, but he is honorable. Trust him as I have. With all my love. James. Tears blurred Emily's vision as she read. James had tried to protect her, even in death. She slipped the ring onto her finger, its weight a bittersweet comfort. But the deed raised more questions than answers. If it was legal, why hadn't Grayson known about it? Was he hiding something, or was someone else pulling the strings? Sleep eluded her that night, her dreams haunted by gunfire and shadowy figures. Each time she woke, the solid walls of the stone house reassured her, but the dangers of Redstone Creek loomed large in her mind. Part 3: Shadows of Conspiracy. Morning arrived with the crow of roosters and the rich aroma of coffee and bacon drifting from the kitchen. Emily, dressed in a simple gray dress, pinned her hair into a neat bun and tucked the deed and James's note into her pocket before heading downstairs. In the kitchen, Mrs. White Owl was at the stove, while Caleb sat at a small table, a mug of coffee in his hands. "Good morning," Emily said, taking a seat. "I hope I'm not late for breakfast." "Just in time," Mrs. White Owl replied, setting a plate of eggs, bacon, and biscuits before her. Caleb studied her face. "You look tired." "Rough night." "I had a lot on my mind," Emily admitted. After a moment, she pulled the deed from her pocket and placed it on the table. "James left me his ranch." Caleb didn't look surprised. He examined the document carefully. "It's in order, signed and witnessed." "Did you know about this?" "I suspected," Caleb said. "James mentioned he was planning to put the ranch in your name to protect it from Caldwell and Malone. I didn't know if he'd done it before he died." "Why didn't you tell me last night?" "I didn't want to raise your hopes until I was sure. And I needed to confirm something first." "Confirm what?" Emily asked, her voice sharp. "Whether Caldwell knew about this deed," Caleb said grimly. "If he did, it might explain why James died so suddenly, just days before you arrived." The implication hung heavy in the air. "You think Mr. Caldwell had James killed because of this deed?" "It's possible. With James dead and you not yet here, Caldwell might have thought he could seize the ranch through James's debts. He wouldn't have expected James to transfer ownership. But now that I'm here with the deed," Emily trailed off. "Now you're in danger," Caleb finished. "If Caldwell's willing to kill once for that land, he won't hesitate to do it again." Mrs. White Owl, who had been listening silently, spoke up. "The girl needs protection, Caleb. More than just staying here." "I know," Caleb said. "That's why I sent for Marshal Daniel Hayes this morning. He should be here by noon." "A federal marshal?" Emily asked. "Yes. He's a good man, not in Caldwell's pocket. If there's been a murder, he'll investigate properly." Emily's mind raced. "What should I do in the meantime? If this deed is legal, the ranch is mine. I should see it for myself." "That's reckless," Mrs. White Owl said sharply. "Until we know who killed James and why, you're safer here." "She's right," Caleb agreed. Stay here today. Once Marshal Hayes arrives, we'll decide what's next. Emily wanted to argue, but the thought of facing men like Malone or Caldwell alone was daunting. Very well, she said. But I want to know everything you find out. Caleb finished his coffee and stood. I need to check the north pasture. One of my hands saw strangers near the fence line yesterday. Do you think it's related? Emily asked. I don't believe in coincidences, Caleb said darkly. He looked at Mrs. White Owl. Keep the rifle ready. Mrs. White Owl nodded, and Caleb left, his spurs jingling faintly. The older woman began clearing the dishes. He's worried, she said. I haven't seen him this tense in years. You've known him a long time, Emily asked. Since he was a boy. His father, William Stone, saved my brother's life during a raid. When both our families were killed years later, Caleb gave me a home here. She glanced at Emily. He doesn't trust easily, but his loyalty is unbreakable. James trusted him, Emily mused. James Thornton was a good judge of character. One of the few who treated Caleb with respect, despite his Navajo blood. Emily hesitated, then asked, what happened to Caleb's parents? He said they died when he was young. Mrs. White Owl's face darkened. Murdered. Their ranch was burned to the ground. The sheriff called it a Comanche raid, but Caleb never believed that. His mother's people wouldn't have harmed her or her son. Does he know who was responsible? He has suspicions, Mrs. White Owl said, her eyes narrowing. Vincent Caldwell was just starting his bank back then. He needed land for Eastern investors, just like he needs James's land now. Emily's breath caught. The pieces are starting to fit. History repeats itself out here, Mrs. White Owl said grimly. The sound of approaching horses cut their conversation short. Mrs. White Owl moved to the window, then grabbed the rifle above the door. Stay inside, she ordered. It's Patrick Malone, and he's brought men. Emily's heart pounded as she peered through the curtains. 6 riders approached, led by Malone, all armed and grim-faced. Where's Caleb? She asked, fear tightening her throat. Still in the north pasture. He won't be back for an hour. Mrs. White Owl checked the rifle. Go upstairs and stay out of sight. I'll handle this. I can't leave you alone, Emily protested. You can and you will, Mrs. White Owl said firmly. Caleb would never forgive me if something happened to you. Now go. Reluctantly, Emily hurried upstairs but went to her room's window, which overlooked the front of the house. From there, she saw Malone and his men dismount, their expressions hard and determined. Mrs. White Owl stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, as Malone's voice rang out. Where's Thornton's woman, White Owl? I know Stone brought her here. Part 4, Confrontation and Flight. From her vantage point, Emily watched with growing dread as Patrick Malone and his men fanned out before the house. Mrs. White Owl stood resolute, her rifle raised but not aimed directly at the intruders. Where is she? Malone demanded, his voice cutting through the morning air. I know Stone's hiding her here. This is private property, Mrs. White Owl replied, her tone steady. You and your men need to leave. Malone laughed, a harsh grating sound. You think that rifle scares us? There's 6 of us and 1 of you. I just want to talk to Miss Harper about Thornton's ranch. Mr. Stone isn't here, Mrs. White Owl said. Come back when he returns if you have business to discuss. One of Malone's men, a lean man with a scarred face, spat on the ground. We ain't here to talk to the half-breed. We're here for the woman. Emily's pulse quickened. How did they know about the deed? Had someone seen James give the box to Caleb, Or was this about intimidating her as the newcomer with a potential claim? Whatever the reason, she couldn't let Mrs. White Owl face these men alone. Drawing a deep breath, Emily straightened her shoulders and descended the stairs. "I'm right here, Mr. Malone," she called, stepping onto the porch beside Mrs. White Owl. "There's no need to threaten anyone." Malone removed his hat with mock courtesy. "Miss Harper, we were just discussing your situation." "My situation is none of your concern," Emily said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Oh, but it is," Malone said, his smile fading. "Thornton died owing me money. His ranch rightfully belongs to me now." "That's between you and the bank," Emily countered. "I don't see how it involves me." Malone's eyes narrowed. "Don't play coy, miss. Word's out that Thornton might have left you something, a deed maybe." Emily fought to keep her expression neutral. "So he did know. I arrived in Redstone Creek yesterday to find my fiancée dead and buried. I'm just trying to figure out what to do next." "I'd like to make you an offer," Malone said, stepping closer. Mrs. White Owl raised the rifle slightly, halting him. "If Thornton left you anything, I'll buy it from you. A fair price, enough to get you settled back east." "That's generous," Emily said carefully, "but I'm still considering my options." "Don't consider too long," Malone warned, his tone darkening. "This territory's no place for a woman alone. Accidents happen, especially to those who get mixed up with men like Stone." "Is that a threat, Mr. Malone?" Emily asked, her voice steady despite her fear. "Just friendly advice," Malone said, settling his hat back on his head. "You don't know who to trust out here. I'll give you until tomorrow to think it over. After that, things might get complicated." With a nod to his men, Malone mounted his horse. The others followed, but they lingered, as if memorizing the layout of the ranch. "This ain't over," Mrs. White Owl muttered. "They're planning something." As if to confirm her words, Malone called out, "Tell Stone we stopped by. And tell him to remember what happened the last time he got in my way." Emily and Mrs. White Owl remained on the porch until the riders were out of sight. Only then did Emily exhale, her knees weak with relief. "You should have stayed upstairs," Mrs. White Owl scolded, but there was a glint of respect in her eyes. "I couldn't let you face them alone," Emily said. What did Malone mean about the last time Caleb got in his way? Mrs. White Owl's expression darkened. 3 years ago, Malone tried to force a widow, Clara Evans, off her land. Caleb helped her keep it. Malone never forgave him. What happened to Mrs. Evans? She sold her land to a family from Texas, not to Malone, and moved to Santa Fe with her son, Mrs. White Owl said, shouldering the rifle. "Come inside. We need to secure the house in case they come back." As they returned indoors, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Malone's visit was just the beginning. "Where's Marshal Hayes? Shouldn't he be here by now?" "The nearest marshal's office is in Flagstaff, a day's ride away," Mrs. White Owl said. "He won't be here until tomorrow at the earliest." Emily's heart sank. A lot could happen in a day, especially with Malone circling. "What do we do?" "Prepare," Mrs. White Owl said simply. She unlocked a cabinet in the main room, revealing an arsenal of rifles and ammunition. "Can you shoot?" "I've never held a gun," Emily admitted. Mrs. White Owl sighed, then handed her a small revolver. "This is a Smith & Wesson .38. Light, good for a woman's hand. 5 shots, double action." "I could shoot someone," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper as she held the revolver gingerly, its cold metal foreign in her hands. "When it's your life or theirs, you'll find the strength," Mrs. White Owl said, her tone matter-of-fact but edged with grim certainty. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." The next hour passed in a blur of instruction. Mrs. White Owl led Emily to the barn, where they set up empty tin cans as targets along a wooden fence. The older woman demonstrated how to load, aim, and fire the revolver, her movements precise and practiced. Emily's first shots went wide, kicking up dust or pinging harmlessly into the dirt, but under Mrs. White Owl's patient guidance, she began to find her mark. Each pull of the trigger steadied her nerves, the act of firing transforming her fear into a flicker of resolve. "Not bad," Mrs. White Owl said, nodding as Emily finally struck a can, sending it spinning off the fence. "Keep practicing. I need to start lunch." Left alone in the barn, Emily reloaded the revolver, her hands growing more confident with each bullet. The rhythmic task kept her mind from spiraling into panic, though the weight of Malone's threats lingered like a storm cloud. She was mid-reload when the barn door creaked open, startling her. She nearly dropped the gun, then exhaled in relief as Caleb stepped inside, his expression dark. "Mrs. White Owl told me what happened," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Malone's getting bold." "He knows about the deed," Emily said, her fingers tightening around the revolver. "How is that possible?" "Vincent Caldwell must have told him," Caleb replied, crossing to a bale of hay and leaning against it. "They've been working together more than folks realize. Caldwell's got the money, Malone's got the muscle." Emily set the revolver down, her hands trembling slightly. "Do you think Malone will come back?" "Not today," Caleb said, his eyes scanning the barn as if expecting trouble even here. "He'll wait until he thinks we're off guard. But we can't stay here long." He glanced at the revolver. "I see Mrs. White Owl's been teaching you to shoot." "She thought it was necessary," Emily said, a faint blush creeping up her cheeks. "I'm not very good yet." Caleb moved to stand beside her, picking up the revolver and checking its load with a practiced eye. "You're doing fine. Let me show you something." He adjusted her grip, his calloused hands warm against hers. "Hold it like this, firmer but not tense. It'll help with the recoil." Emily nodded, hyper-aware of his proximity, the faint scent of leather and sage that clung to him. She forced herself to focus on the target, firing a shot that grazed a can. "Better," Caleb said, stepping back. "Keep at it. You might need it." His words sent a chill through her. "You're planning something, aren't you?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "I think we should move you to Thornton's ranch. It's not safe here with Malone watching the place. They won't expect us to take you to James's property, and there's something there I need to show you, something that might explain why he was killed." "What is it?" Emily asked, her curiosity piqued. "Better I show you," Caleb said. "We'll go at dusk, when we're less likely to be seen." The rest of the afternoon was spent in tense preparation. Caleb and his ranch hands patrolled the perimeter, checking for signs of Malone's men, while Mrs. White Owl packed supplies for the journey to Thornton's ranch. Emily practiced with the revolver until her arm ached, determined to be ready for whatever lay ahead. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the valley in shades of gold and purple, Caleb returned to the house. "It's time," he said quietly. "The horses are saddled out back." Mrs. White Owl handed Emily a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. "Food, water, and some bandages. The revolver's loaded, and in there too." "You're not coming with us?" Emily asked, a pang of alarm shooting through her. "Someone needs to stay here to keep up appearances," Mrs. White Owl said. "If Malone's men come back, they need to think you're still here." Emily embraced the older woman impulsively. "Thank you for everything. Please be careful." "You're the one who needs to be careful," Mrs. White Owl said, returning the embrace briefly before stepping back. "Listen to Caleb. He knows this land better than anyone." They slipped out the back door as darkness settled over the ranch. 2 horses waited, their breaths visible in the cool night air. Caleb helped Emily mount a gentle bay mare, then swung onto his own horse, a powerful chestnut stallion. "Stay close," he murmured. "We'll take the creek bed for the first few miles. It'll hide our tracks." They rode in silence, the only sounds the soft thud of hooves and the distant howl of a coyote. Emily had never ridden at night, and the experience was both thrilling and unnerving. The familiar landscape of the day transformed into a world of shadows, every rock and tree a potential threat. Caleb led them along a winding path, pausing occasionally to listen for pursuers. After what felt like hours, they crested a ridge, and he raised a hand for her to stop. "Thornton's ranch," he said, pointing to a valley below. Emily strained her eyes in the moonlight. A small ranch house stood in the distance, its windows dark and lifeless. A barn and corral flanked it, the entire scene cloaked in an eerie stillness that sent a shiver down her spine. "It looks so empty," she whispered. "It's been empty since James died," Caleb said. His foreman and hands left when they heard the bank might seize the property. He nudged his horse forward. "Come on, we'll approach from the west through those cottonwoods." As they drew closer, Emily could make out more details. The house was modest but well built, with a wide porch and large windows, just as James had described in his letters. A neglected garden stretched along one side, its plants wilted but still clinging to life. Caleb led them to the barn, dismounting and tying the horses inside. "We'll leave them here," he said. "Less chance of them being spotted." Inside the barn, he lit a small lantern, keeping the flame low. The space was orderly, with stalls for horses, tack hanging neatly on the walls and a hayloft above. "James was a good rancher," Caleb said, looking around. "Kept everything in its place." "What did you want to show me?" Emily asked, her voice echoing softly in the quiet. "It's in the house," Caleb said. "But first, we need to make sure we're alone." They approached the house cautiously, Caleb with his rifle at the ready, Emily clutching the revolver Mrs. White Owl had given her. The front door was locked, but Caleb produced a key. "James gave me this," he explained. "For emergencies." The interior was dark, the furniture draped in sheets to protect it from dust. Caleb lit another lantern, revealing a comfortable home, simple but thoughtfully furnished, with a large stone fireplace in the main room and a well-equipped kitchen. "He built this for you," Caleb said quietly. "He was certain you'd love it here." Tears pricked Emily's eyes. This was the home she and James were supposed to share, now standing empty, a monument to a life that would never be. "You said there was something here that might explain why James was killed," she said, pushing past her grief. Caleb nodded and led her to a small study off the main room. A desk stood against one wall, its surface bare except for a ledger and an inkwell. Caleb moved to a bookshelf, pulling out several volumes to reveal a hidden safe built into the wall. "James showed me this once," he said, working the combination. "Said if anything happened to him, I should check what was inside." The safe opened with a soft click, and Caleb pulled out a leather folder. "This is what I wanted you to see." Emily opened the folder on the desk, her fingers trembling. Inside were maps, letters, and legal documents. She frowned as she examined them. "These are surveys and land deeds." "Not just any land," Caleb said. "Look at the dates and locations." As Emily studied the documents, a pattern emerged. All the properties were in Redstone Creek County, purchased by James Thornton within the last year. "I don't understand," she said. "Why would James buy all these parcels? Some don't even seem suitable for ranching." "They are not," Caleb agreed. "But they all have one thing in common." He spread a larger map on the desk, pointing to a line drawn across it. "Each piece of land sits along the proposed route of the Southern Pacific Railroad." Emily's eyes widened as she traced the line, connecting the properties James had acquired. He was buying land for the railroad. "Not exactly," Caleb said, his voice grim. "He was buying land the railroad would need. Vincent Caldwell's been working with the railroad for years, secretly buying up property along their planned route. When the route's announced, those land prices will soar." "So James was competing with Caldwell," Emily said, the pieces falling into place. "Buying the same land Caldwell wanted." "Yes, and there's more." Caleb showed her a letter from the railroad. They were considering changing the route to go through James's ranch instead of Caldwell's land because of the water. For the steam engines, Emily realized. They'd need a reliable water source. Exactly. If the railroad chose James's route, Caldwell's investments would be worthless. Caleb's expression darkened. "That's a motive for murder." The implications hit Emily like a blow. James's death, the sudden interest in his ranch, the pressure on her to leave, it all made sense now. "We need to take these to Marshal Hayes," she said. "They are evidence." "Yes, but first." A sound from outside cut him off, the unmistakable thud of approaching horses. Caleb extinguished the lantern, plunging them into darkness. "Stay here," he whispered. "Don't move." He moved silently to the window, peering through a gap in the curtains. Emily held her breath, straining to hear. The hoofbeats grew louder, then stopped. Men's voices carried faintly on the night air. Caleb returned to her side. "Malone and his men," he murmured. "At least 4 of them. They must have followed us." "What do we do?" Emily whispered, fear clawing at her throat. "Take the documents and go out the back door. There's a root cellar about 50 yards behind the house. Hide there while I draw them away." "I can't leave you to face them alone," Emily protested. "You have to," Caleb said, his voice firm. "Those documents are the only proof we have of why James was killed. If anything happens to them, or you, his death was for nothing." Before she could argue, a rifle shot shattered the night, a bullet splintering the window frame. "Thornton's woman," Malone's voice bellowed. "We know you're in there. Come out and no one gets hurt." Caleb grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her toward the back of the house. "They're trying to flush us out," he whispered. "Stay low." They crouched as they moved through the darkened house, another shot ringing out behind them. At the kitchen, Caleb checked the back door and yard. "It's clear, but they might be circling around. When I open the door, run for the root cellar. Don't stop, don't look back." "What about you?" Emily clutched the leather folder to her chest. "I'll hold them off and join you," he said, touching her cheek briefly. "Be ready." Caleb threw open the door and fired 2 quick shots into the darkness, providing cover. Emily ran, her skirts gathered in one hand, the documents in the other. The night air was sharp against her face as she sprinted across the open ground, expecting a bullet at any moment. The root cellar was built into a low hillside, its wooden doors flush with the earth. She yanked one open and stumbled down the steps, pulling the door shut behind her. The cellar smelled of damp earth and forgotten vegetables. Emily felt her way to the far wall, huddling there, her breathing ragged. Outside, gunfire continued, one shot then another, then a rapid volley that made her flinch. Minutes stretched into eternity, the sounds of battle shifting, then fading, then surging again. She clutched the revolver, her palms sweaty, her mind racing. Was Caleb alive? Had Malone's men found him? A sudden silence fell, more terrifying than the gunfire. Emily strained to hear voices, footsteps, anything, but there was nothing. The quiet stretched on, her fear growing with each passing second. Then faintly, she heard footsteps approaching the cellar, deliberate and heavy. She raised the revolver, aiming at the doors above, her finger trembling on the trigger. One door creaked open, a sliver of moonlight piercing the darkness. "Emily," Caleb's voice was a hoarse whisper. "Are you in there?" Relief flooded through her. "Yes," she whispered back. The door opened wider, and Caleb's silhouette appeared against the night sky. "It's safe for now. Malone's men retreated, but they'll be back with more." Emily climbed out, still clutching the folder. "Are you hurt?" "Just a graze," he said, though she saw a dark stain on his sleeve. "We need to move." The horses might have been spooked by the gunfire. "We'll go on foot." "Where?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. "There's an old Navajo cave system 2 miles from here. We can hide there until morning, then try to reach town and find Marshal Hayes." As they moved away from the ranch, keeping to the shadows, Emily glanced back at the house that should have been her home. In just 2 days, her life had been upended. She had come to Redstone Creek expecting to be a bride. Now she was a fugitive, carrying evidence of a murder plot, with only a half-Navajo rancher she barely knew for protection. Yet, as Caleb led her into the wilderness, she felt a strange clarity. James had trusted this man, and now so did she. Part 5: Sanctuary in the Shadows. The night grew colder as Caleb guided Emily through the rugged terrain beyond Thornton's ranch. They moved in silence, sticking to moonlit shadows, pausing to listen for pursuers. Emily's city boots, meant for Philadelphia's paved streets, rubbed blisters into her heels, but she pressed on, refusing to slow them down. After nearly 2 hours, they reached the base of a steep rock formation, its jagged silhouette looming against the starry sky. Caleb paused, scanning the area before gesturing for Emily to follow him up a narrow path twisting between boulders. "Watch your step," he murmured. "The entrance is hidden." The path ended at what looked like a solid rock face. Caleb brushed aside a tangle of dried brush, revealing a dark opening just wide enough to slip through sideways. "It doesn't look like much out here," he said, "but it opens up inside." He entered first, then reached back to guide Emily through. The cave widened into a spacious chamber with a high ceiling, several smaller passages branching off. Caleb struck a match, illuminating the space, then lit a small oil lamp from his pack. In its soft glow, Emily saw ancient paintings on the walls, handprints, animals, and intricate symbols in red and ochre. "It's breathtaking," she said, momentarily forgetting their peril. "These paintings are centuries old," Caleb said, setting the lamp on a flat rock. "My mother's ancestors believed this cave linked our world to the spirits. It was a sacred place, later a refuge during raids. Few outsiders know it exists." Emily sank onto a boulder, exhaustion washing over her. The past 2 days, James's death, the deed, Malone's threats, their desperate flight, felt like a lifetime. Caleb handed her a canteen. "Small sips. We need to make it last." She drank gratefully, then noticed his arm. "Your graze, let me see it." He hesitated, then sat beside her and rolled up his sleeve. The bullet had carved a shallow furrow in his upper arm, the wound bloody but not deep. "It needs cleaning," Emily said, opening Mrs. White Owl's bundle. Among the supplies was a small medical kit. "Mrs. White Owl thinks of everything. She saved my hide more than once," Caleb said with a faint smile. Emily cleaned the wound with water and a cloth, then applied a salve from the kit. Caleb winced but stayed silent as she worked. "You've done this before," he observed. "I helped in a hospital during the war's final year," Emily said, tying a bandage around his arm. "I saw worse than this." "Thank you," he said, their eyes meeting in the lamplight. A moment of connection passed between them, warm and unexpected, making Emily's breath catch. She looked away, busying herself with the medical kit. "You should rest," Caleb said after a pause. "I'll keep watch." "You're injured and haven't slept either," Emily protested. "I'm used to it," he said. "Navajo warriors train to stay alert for days." "I'll be fine." Emily wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her, heavy with fatigue. She arranged her skirts and used the bundle as a pillow, settling onto a flat section of the cave floor. "Wake me at dawn," she said. "I will," Caleb promised, moving to the cave entrance to watch for trouble. Sleep came fitfully, her mind racing with fears and questions. Would they reach Marshall Hayes? Would the documents prove Caldwell's guilt? And beneath it all, thoughts of Caleb, his quiet strength, the gentleness hidden beneath his hard exterior. She had come west to marry James, a man known only through letters. Now she was entrusting her life to a stranger who was becoming something more. Exhaustion finally pulled her under, her dreams a jumble of gunfire, galloping horses, and Caleb's dark, watchful eyes. When he woke her, faint gray light filtered through the cave entrance. "It's time," he said softly, helping her to her feet. Emily stretched, wincing at the soreness in her muscles. Her dress was torn and filthy, her hair loose from its pins, but such vanities seemed trivial now. They ate a quick breakfast of jerky and dried apples, then gathered their belongings, the leather folder tucked safely inside Emily's bodice. "What's the plan?" she asked as they prepared to leave. "We'll follow Coyote Wash to the valley," Caleb explained. "It's longer than crossing open ground, but it's safer. Once we hit the valley, we're 3 miles from town." "And when we get there," Emily asked, "we find Marshall Hayes. If he's not in town yet, there's a telegraph office at the train depot. We can wire his office in Flagstaff." They left the cave as the sky lightened, the first rays of sun touching the peaks above. The morning was crisp, the air scented with sage and pine. Under different circumstances, Emily might have found the landscape exhilarating, its wild beauty a stark contrast to Philadelphia's orderly streets. Now, every shadow held potential danger. Caleb led the way down a steep path to the wash below, a dry streambed offering natural cover. They had been walking for an hour when Caleb froze, raising a hand. He listened intently, then pulled Emily behind a boulder. "Riders," he whispered. "Coming this way." Emily's heart raced as she strained to hear. After a moment, she caught the distant sound of hooves on hard earth. "Malone," she whispered. "Likely," Caleb said. "They must have picked up our trail. Malone's got a tracker who used to scout for the army, best in the territory." "What do we do?" Caleb thought for a moment. "There's an old mining tunnel half a mile ahead, branching off the wash. We can use it to reach the other side of that ridge." He pointed to a rocky outcrop to their east. "It'll slow them down, maybe lose them." They moved quickly, staying low, the sound of riders growing louder but still distant. As they rounded a bend, Caleb pointed to a dark opening in the rock face. The tunnel's entrance was partially collapsed, leaving a narrow gap. Inside, the air was cool and damp, smelling of earth and rotting timbers. Caleb lit a match, revealing a tunnel shored up with wooden beams, some sagging under the weight of time. "Is it safe?" Emily asked, eyeing the ceiling warily. "Safe enough if we're careful," Caleb said. "It hasn't been used in years, but the beams are holding." They advanced slowly, Caleb lighting matches to guide them. The tunnel sloped upward, twisting through what had once been a silver vein. They crouched to avoid low beams, picking their way around fallen rocks. "How much farther?" Emily asked, the confined space pressing on her nerves. "Not far," Caleb said. "There's a junction soon, then a shaft to the surface." The tunnel widened into a small chamber with 3 passages. Caleb studied them by matchlight, then chose the rightmost. "This way." The others lead deeper into the mountain. The new tunnel was narrower, forcing them to move single file. After a few minutes, they reached a vertical shaft with crude wooden rungs set into the wall. "This leads up," Caleb said. "I'll go first to check it's clear." He climbed nimbly despite his injury, pushing aside a covering of brush at the top. Moments later, his face reappeared. "It's clear. Come up slowly, some rungs are rotten." Emily gathered her skirts and climbed, the ladder creaking under her weight. Halfway up, a rung snapped, her foot dangling in space. She gasped, clinging to the shaft's sides. "Easy," Caleb called. "There's another rung just below." She found it and continued, relief flooding her as Caleb's hands pulled her onto solid ground. They emerged into a clearing, surrounded by scrub oak and pinyon pine. To the east, the valley stretched toward Redstone Creek, its buildings a distant speck. To the west rose the ridge they'd crossed, and beyond it, the peaks where they'd hidden. "We made good time," Caleb said, scanning the horizon. "No sign of Malone's men. They'll waste hours searching the wash." "How far is town now?" Emily asked, brushing dirt from her dress. "About 4 miles. We'll need to be careful closer to town. Caldwell's got eyes on the roads." They set off, keeping to the tree line for cover. The sun climbed higher, its heat intensifying as morning turned to midday. Emily's throat was parched, her water gone, but she kept pace with Caleb, driven by the need to reach safety. As they neared the valley floor, the vegetation thinned, offering less concealment. They paused at the edge of an open expanse, weighing their options. "We'll have to cross that to reach the road," Caleb said. "It's risky, but faster than circling around." Before Emily could respond, a rifle shot cracked the air, a bullet kicking up dirt nearby. "Down," Caleb shouted, pulling her behind a fallen log. More shots followed, thudding into the wood or ricocheting off rocks. Emily pressed herself into the earth, her heart pounding. "They must have guessed our route," Caleb said grimly. "They've cut us off from town." "How many?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Caleb peeked over the log. 3 spread along that ridge to the east. "Could be more." Another volley forced him back down. "They're pinning us here until Malone arrives." Caleb checked his rifle. 8 shots left. Not enough to hold them off long. Emily felt for the revolver in her pocket. "I have 5 shots." Caleb gave her a grim smile. "Let's hope we don't need them." He studied their surroundings. "There's a gully 50 yards to the right. If we reach it, we can circle back to an old mining camp. There's a trail there to the north end of town." "How do we get there?" Emily asked. "They'll shoot us if we move." "I'll cover you," Caleb said. "When I say go, run for those rocks, then the gully. Don't stop, don't look back." Emily's throat tightened. His tone suggested he might not follow. "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you," he said, but his eyes betrayed doubt. He squeezed her hand. "Ready. 3, 2, 1, go." Caleb stood, firing rapidly at the distant figures, forcing them to take cover. Emily ran, her lungs burning, bullets kicking up dust around her. She reached the rocks and paused, looking back. Caleb was still by the log, his rifle now empty. He drew his pistol, firing as he began to run toward her. A cry of pain tore from him as a bullet struck his side. He stumbled but kept moving, collapsing beside her at the rocks. "Caleb," Emily cried, seeing blood spread across his shirt. "Keep going," he gasped. "The gully." "I won't leave you," she said, tearing a strip from her petticoat to press against his wound. "Can you stand?" With her help, Caleb struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on her. They staggered toward the gully. The shooting paused as the gunmen repositioned. They were 15 yards from safety when the firing resumed. Caleb jerked as another bullet grazed his thigh, nearly bringing them down. "Leave me," he gasped. "Save yourself." Instead, Emily drew the revolver and fired back, her wild shots forcing the gunmen to duck. The distraction bought them seconds to reach the gully. They half fell down the steep bank, landing in the dry stream bed, its 6-foot depth shielding them from the gunfire above. Emily dragged Caleb into the shadow of the bank and examined his wounds. The bullet in his side hadn't exited, a bad sign. His thigh bled steadily, though the graze was shallow. His face was pale, his breathing labored. "You need a doctor," she said, binding his wounds with more petticoat strips. "No time," Caleb whispered. "They'll come to finish us. You have to go." "I'm not leaving you," Emily said fiercely. "Listen to me, Caleb. Those men will kill us both if they find us. The documents prove what Caldwell and Malone did. James trusted you to see this through." A commotion above interrupted them. Men's voices, horses, then a new voice commanding, "This is United States Marshal Daniel Hayes. Drop your weapons and identify yourselves." Emily and Caleb exchanged a look of disbelief. Help had arrived. "Stay here," Emily said, crawling to the gully's edge. On the ridge, she saw the gunmen with hands raised, facing a group of riders led by a tall man with a silver star. Mrs. White Owl was among them, her rifle still in hand. "Marshal Hayes," Emily called, waving. "Down here. We need help." Hayes spotted her and directed 2 deputies to assist, while others secured the prisoners. Mrs. White Owl reached the gully first, sliding down with surprising agility. "Caleb," she said, her face grim as she saw his wounds. "How bad?" "Shot twice," Emily said, still pressing the cloth to his side. "1 bullet still in him." The deputies arrived with a stretcher, and under Mrs. White Owl's direction, they lifted Caleb and carried him up. "Miss Harper," Hayes said, approaching, "I'm Daniel Hayes, United States Marshal." Mrs. White Owl filled me in. "You have evidence about James Thornton's death." Emily nodded, retrieving the leather folder from her bodice. "These show why Vincent Caldwell and Patrick Malone wanted James dead. It's about railroad land speculation." Hayes flipped through the documents, his expression hardening. "This is damning evidence. Enough for a full investigation." He looked at her with respect. "You've shown incredible courage, Miss Harper." "Please, we need to get Caleb to a doctor," Emily urged. "Of course," Hayes said. "We've got a wagon. But not to Doc Harrison, he's in Caldwell's pocket." "There's a Navajo healer 5 miles north," Mrs. White Owl said. "She can remove the bullet." Hayes nodded. "Lead the way, Mrs. White Owl. 2 deputies will go with you. The rest of us will escort Miss Harper to town and secure these prisoners." As they prepared to part, Emily knelt beside Caleb. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. "Caleb," she said softly, taking his hand. "Hold on. Mrs. White Owl's taking you to a healer." His eyes fluttered open, focusing on her with effort. "The documents." "Safe. Marshal Hayes has them," Emily said. "You did it, Caleb." A faint smile touched his lips. "James." Would be proud. Impulsively, Emily pressed a kiss to his forehead. I'll come to you soon, she promised. As Mrs. White Owl and the deputies departed with Caleb, Hayes helped Emily onto his horse. Ready to face Redstone Creek, Miss Harper? He asked. Emily looked toward the town, thinking of all that had transpired in just 2 days. She had come seeking a husband and found a web of greed and murder, but also a strength within herself she hadn't known she possessed. Yes, Marshal, she said, her voice steady. I'm ready. Part 6, Justice in Redstone Creek. The ride into Redstone Creek was tense, the marshal and his deputies surrounding Emily protectively, their 3 prisoners, Malone's hired guns, bound and riding ahead. News of their arrival spread like wildfire, and by the time they reached Main Street, townsfolk lined the porches and doorways, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Word travels fast in small towns, Hayes commented, especially when it involves a federal marshal and gunfire. They stopped outside the sheriff's office, a squat building beside the jailhouse. Sheriff Amos Tucker emerged, a heavy-set man with a drooping mustache and wary eyes. Marshal Hayes, he said stiffly. Wasn't expecting you so soon. Circumstances changed, Hayes replied. I've got 3 prisoners for your jail, Sheriff. Attempted murder of a federal witness. Tucker's gaze flicked to Emily, then back to Hayes. I wasn't aware of any federal investigation here. You are now, Hayes said, dismounting and helping Emily down. Miss Harper has evidence concerning James Thornton's death and land fraud tied to the Southern Pacific Railroad. Tucker paled. That's a serious claim, Marshal. It is, Hayes said. I'll need your office to take Miss Harper's statement officially. As they entered the sheriff's office, Emily was acutely aware of her appearance, her torn dress, disheveled hair, and hands stained with Caleb's blood. She looked nothing like the refined seamstress who had arrived in Redstone Creek, yet she felt a strange pride in her survival. Hayes directed her to a chair, sending a deputy for water and food. Tucker hovered, clearly uneasy. Sheriff, send a deputy to bring Vincent Caldwell here, Hayes said. Tell him it's about Thornton's property. Caldwell won't like being summoned, Tucker protested. Then he can bring his lawyer, Hayes said evenly. But he's coming. After Tucker left to carry out the order, Hayes turned to Emily. Now, Miss Harper, tell me everything from the beginning. Leave nothing out. For the next hour, Emily recounted her story. Her correspondence with James, her journey west, her arrival to find him dead, the deed, Malone's threats, and the railroad documents. Hayes listened intently, asking occasional questions but mostly letting her speak. You've been through hell, he said when she finished. Few would have held up as well as you have. I didn't feel strong, Emily admitted. I was terrified most of the time. Courage is acting despite fear, Hayes said. He studied the documents. These give a clear motive for murder. The question is whether we can prove Caldwell or Malone killed Thornton. James's letter said he feared for his life, Emily said. And Mr. Grayson said it was pneumonia, but Caleb doubted that. We'll need to exhume the body, Hayes said grimly. If Thornton was poisoned, there might be evidence. The thought of disturbing James's grave pained Emily, but she nodded. If it brings his killer to justice. Their conversation was interrupted by Vincent Caldwell's arrival. He strode into the office with the confidence of a man accustomed to power, his tailored suit and silver hair a stark contrast to the dusty town. Behind him trailed a nervous young lawyer clutching a briefcase. Marshal Hayes, Caldwell said with forced warmth, this is unexpected. I wasn't aware the federal authorities had business in Redstone Creek. Thank you for coming, Mr. Caldwell, Hayes said, not rising. This is Miss Emily Harper. Caldwell's eyes narrowed as he took in Emily's appearance. Thornton's mail-order bride. My condolences, Miss Harper. Thank you, Emily said coolly, though I suspect your condolences are less sincere, given your interest in James's land. Caldwell's composure flickered, but he recovered quickly. I don't know what you're implying, but my dealings are always legitimate. Including your land purchases along the railroad route, Hayes asked, sliding a document across the desk. And your pressure on Thornton to sell his water rights. Caldwell glanced at the document but didn't touch it. My private business is no concern of yours, Marshall. If you have an accusation, make it. Very well, Hayes said. I'm investigating James Thornton's death on suspicion of murder. Caldwell's lawyer stepped forward. That's outrageous. Dr. Harrison confirmed Thornton died of natural causes. We'll speak with Dr. Harrison soon, Hayes said. And I've wired Judge Rutherford for an exhumation order. Caldwell's face drained of color. This is absurd. You have no grounds. I have evidence suggesting Thornton's death benefited those who stood to lose if he lived, Hayes said. I have a witness who received a letter from Thornton fearing for his life, and documented proof of land speculation providing motive. Caldwell's lawyer whispered urgently, but Caldwell waved him off. This is a fishing expedition, Marshall. You have no proof linking me to Thornton's death because there is none. Then you won't mind a medical examination of the body, Hayes said. In the meantime, don't leave town, Mr. Caldwell. You're placing me under house arrest, Caldwell snapped. Consider it a request for now, Hayes said. Try to leave, and I'll have grounds for more. After Caldwell stormed out, Hayes turned to Emily. He's scared. A guilty man would be planning his escape. Will he run? Emily asked. My deputies are watching his house and bank, Hayes said. If he tries, we'll know, he stood. You need rest, Miss Harper. I've arranged a room at the hotel under guard. It's not as remote as Stone's ranch, but it's safe. I'd like to check on Caleb first, Emily said. His wounds were serious. Mrs. White Owl sent word. The healer removed the bullet in Stone's stable, Hayes said. She suggests you rest today and visit tomorrow when he's stronger. Reluctantly, Emily agreed. Exhaustion was catching up, her body heavy with the weight of the past days. Hayes escorted her to the hotel, where the owner's wife, Mrs. Donovan, a warm, motherly woman, fussed over her, arranging a hot bath and clean clothes. Don't you worry, dear, Mrs. Donovan said. The marshal's got a deputy outside your door. You're safe here. Cleaned and dressed in a borrowed nightgown, Emily sank into the hotel bed. Despite her fatigue, sleep was elusive, her mind replaying Caleb's sacrifice, James's murder, and the looming threat of Caldwell and Malone. She must have drifted off eventually, because sunlight streaming through the curtains and a soft knock woke her. Miss Harper, it was Mrs. Donovan. Breakfast is ready, and Marshall Hayes would like to see you when you're up. Emily dressed in a borrowed blue dress, slightly too big but clean, and ate a hearty breakfast, her hunger surprising her. In the hotel's private dining room, Hayes greeted her. You look better, he said. Rest does wonders. Any news? Emily asked. Plenty, Hayes said, his expression grim but satisfied. Caldwell tried to slip out last night. My deputies caught him at the depot with cash and documents. He's in custody. Has he confessed? Emily asked. Not yet, but he's pointing fingers at Malone, claiming Malone acted alone in Thornton's death, Hayes said. I don't buy it. Caldwell's too cunning to let anything happen without his say-so. We're bringing Malone in now. With both in custody, one will crack to save himself. And the exhumation? Emily asked, bracing herself. Judge Rutherford arrived this morning, Hayes said. The exhumation's today, with a medical examiner from Flagstaff. Emily nodded, steeling herself. There's something else you should know, Hayes continued. Word of your ownership of Thornton's ranch is out. Caldwell's lawyer is challenging the deed, claiming Thornton wasn't of sound mind when he signed it. That's nonsense, Emily said. The deed was witnessed weeks before his death. True, but without Thornton to confirm his intent, it could be a legal fight, Hayes said. You might need a lawyer. I can't afford a long court battle, Emily admitted. Hayes smiled faintly. I took the liberty of contacting a friend in Flagstaff, Judge Ellis, who now practices law. He's agreed to represent you pro bono. He's got a grudge against railroad speculators like Caldwell. Tears of gratitude welled in Emily's eyes. Thank you, Marshal. Save your thanks for when we win, Hayes said. Now, I believe you wanted to see Stone. Mrs. White Owl says he's awake and asking for you. A deputy escorted Emily to the healer's cabin north of town, a small home surrounded by herb gardens. Mrs. White Owl met her at the door, looking weary but relieved. He's awake, she said. Stubborn fool wouldn't rest until he knew you were safe. The healer, an elderly Navajo woman named Singing Bird, led Emily to a back room where Caleb lay on a pallet, his chest bare except for bandages. His skin was pale, but his eyes were clear as they met hers. Emily, he said, his voice weak but warm. You're all right. I'm fine, she said, kneeling beside him. Thanks to you and Mrs. White Owl. Marshal Hayes has Caldwell in custody, and they're bringing in Malone. Relief crossed Caleb's face. Good. Did they find proof of Thornton's murder? They're exhuming his body today, Emily said softly. If he was poisoned, they'll know. Caleb nodded, then studied her. And the ranch? Your claim. Caldwell's lawyer is fighting the deed, but Hayes found me a lawyer, Judge Ellis. Caleb's lips twitched. Ellis represented my father once in a land dispute. Honest man. He'll fight for you. An awkward pause fell, both unsure what to say. Emily was aware of Mrs. White Owl and Singing Bird watching from the doorway. I should let you rest, she said finally. You need to heal. Caleb caught her hand as she rose. Emily, when this is over, when Caldwell and Malone face justice, what will you do? The question echoed her own thoughts. I don't know, she admitted. I came here to marry James, a man I knew only through letters. Now he's gone, and I'm left with a ranch I never asked for and enemies I never made. You could sell, Caleb suggested. Go back east with enough to start over. Is that what you think I should do? She asked, searching his face. I think you should do what makes you happy, he said, his gaze steady. You've earned that. Singing Bird approached, murmuring to Caleb in Navajo. He replied, then looked at Emily. She says I need rest, and you're welcome to come back tomorrow. I will, Emily promised, squeezing his hand. Rest, Caleb. That's in order. His soft chuckle warmed her as she left, a spark of hope amid the challenges ahead. Part 7, The Verdict and a New Beginning. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and depositions, Redstone Creek gripped by the biggest trial in its history. Judge Rutherford set up court in the town hall, crowds gathering daily for updates. The exhumation confirmed Caleb's suspicions. Traces of arsenic were found in James's remains, proving murder. Initially, Caldwell and Malone denied involvement, each blaming the other. But when Malone's foreman, a jittery man named Lee Carter, testified that he delivered money from Malone to Dr. Harrison to falsify the cause of death, The case unraveled. Harrison, facing charges as an accessory, confessed to supplying the arsenic, administered in small doses to mimic a lingering illness. Malone, seeing his allies turn, implicated Caldwell as the mastermind, securing life imprisonment in exchange for his testimony. Caldwell maintained his innocence, but the evidence, land speculation documents, falsified medical reports, and attempts to intimidate Emily, sealed his fate. On a brisk autumn morning, Judge Rutherford delivered the verdict. Vincent Caldwell and Patrick Malone were guilty of conspiracy and murder. Caldwell was sentenced to hang, Malone to life in prison. As the court adjourned, Emily sat quietly, grappling with mixed emotions. Justice had been served, but it couldn't bring James back. Her claim to the ranch was upheld, but its future and hers remained uncertain. Marshal Hayes approached, hat in hand. "It's over, Miss Harper. You played a big part in bringing these men down." "I wish it hadn't been necessary," Emily said. "So much loss for greed." "That's how it goes sometimes," Hayes said. "But good can come from darkness." He glanced at the courtroom's back, where Caleb stood, leaning on a cane but growing stronger daily. "Judge Ellis says the railroads confirmed the route through Thornton's ranch. The water rights and rail spur make it worth a fortune." "I'm not sure I care about that," Emily said honestly. "Maybe not," Hayes said, "but it gives you choices. Whatever you decide, you'll have the means to do it right." As the crowd dispersed, Caleb approached, his movements slow but steady. "Congratulations," he said. "James would be pleased." "Would he?" Emily asked. "I wonder what he'd think of all this." "He chose you for a reason," Caleb said. "He saw the same strength in you that I've seen." Emily smiled faintly. "Mrs. White Owl invited me to dinner tonight to celebrate the verdict. I'd like to come if you're up for it." "For you always," Caleb said, his eyes warm, sending a flutter through her heart. As they left the courthouse, Emily realized that amid the danger and loss, something unexpected had taken root, a connection she hadn't foreseen when she arrived in Redstone Creek. The town stretched before them, no longer a place of fear, but a community healing from Caldwell's corruption. Thornton's ranch awaited her decision, a legacy she hadn't sought but now held in her hands. And beside her walked Caleb Stone, a man whose courage and honor had saved her life, whose quiet strength had become her anchor. What future would she choose? The ranch with its promise of wealth, a return to Philadelphia's familiar comforts, or something new, a path she was only beginning to envision. As Caleb offered his arm and she took it, stepping into the autumn sunlight, Emily felt hope, not just for justice, but for possibilities she hadn't dared imagine. Part 8. A future forged in the wilderness. Weeks after the trial, Redstone Creek began to heal. Caldwell's bank reopened under new management, promising fair dealings. Malone's cattle operation was auctioned off, the proceeds compensating his victims. For Emily, the trial's end marked not closure but a crossroads. With James's killers punished and her ownership of the ranch secure, she faced the question of what to do with her inheritance and her life. 3 weeks later, Emily stood on the porch of Thornton's ranch, now hers by law. The property had suffered neglect, but its potential shone through, the solid house, fertile land, and life-giving creek. As she gazed out, a horse approached, and she smiled as Caleb dismounted, moving with only a slight limp. "Thought I'd find you here," he said. "Mrs. Donovan said you left town early." "I needed to see it again," Emily said. "Not as a fugitive, but as its owner." Caleb nodded. "What do you think of your ranch, Miss Harper?" "It's beautiful," she admitted. "James built something special. But I don't know if I'm the right person to carry it on." "Why not?" Caleb asked. You've faced worse than this territory can throw at you. Running a ranch isn't the same as surviving danger, Emily said. I was a seamstress in Philadelphia. What do I know about cattle or land? You could learn, Caleb said. Or hire a foreman. You've got options, he paused. I hear you've had offers to buy. 2, Emily said. One from a cattle company in Cheyenne, another from the railroad. Both would make me wealthy. Because of the water rights in Rail Spur, Caleb said. It's prime land, made more valuable by all this. Judge Ellis says I could sell and return to Philadelphia a rich woman, Emily said. I could open a dress shop, live comfortably. Is that what you want? Caleb asked, his voice quiet. Emily hesitated. 3 weeks ago, I'd have said yes. I wanted to escape the pain here. But now, she trailed off, unsure how to voice the shift in her heart. Now, Caleb prompted gently. Now I'm reluctant to leave, she said softly. Despite everything, or maybe because of it, I feel tied to this place. Caleb smiled faintly. The West has a way of claiming you. My mother said the same. She came to visit her sister in Santa Fe, but stayed for my father and this land. They stood in silence, the afternoon sun casting long shadows. I got a letter from the Redstone Creek school board, Emily said. They need a teacher. The last one left after the trial, Caldwell's nephew. Caleb chuckled. Smart move, getting out before the scandal stuck. Are you considering it? I am, Emily said. I loved teaching in Philadelphia, even if it was just sewing classes. The children here deserve a good education. They do, Caleb agreed. And you'd be damn good at it. Another silence fell, charged with unspoken feelings. There's something else, Emily said, summoning her courage. Something influencing whether I stay or go. Caleb looked at her, waiting. You, she said simply. My feelings for you have become important. More than I expected. A flash of surprise crossed Caleb's face, followed by warmth. Emily. Please, she interrupted, let me finish. I know I came here to marry James. I know these feelings might seem improper, and I know your life is here, with your ranch and people depending on you. Caleb stepped closer, his dark eyes intense. Are you saying you'll stay in Redstone Creek? I'm saying I'm considering it, she clarified, and you're a big part of that. Then consider this, Caleb said softly, taking her hand. I've spent my life caught between worlds, Navajo and white, accepted fully by neither. Until James, I had few I could call friend. But you've seen me, Emily, without the prejudice I'm used to. Even when you had every reason to doubt me, you saw the truth. You saved my life, Emily said. More than once. And you saved mine, Caleb countered. Not just from bullets, but in ways you don't realize. He took a breath. What I'm saying is, my feelings for you are important too. Important enough that I'd ask you to consider another option. Emily's heart raced. What option? Our ranches share a boundary, Caleb said. The creek runs through both. Together, they'd be one of the richest spreads in Arizona. Together, the ranches and us. Together, Emily repeated, understanding dawning. I'm not asking for an answer now, Caleb said. I know you came here for James, and I'd never presume to replace him so soon. But if you stay, I'd like to court you properly, to see if what we feel could become something lasting. Tears of joy, not sorrow, filled Emily's eyes. Caleb Stone, are you proposing? Not yet, he said with a smile. When I do, you'll know. For now, I'm asking if you're open to the possibility. The future opened before Emily like the Arizona horizon, vast, challenging, full of promise. I'm open to that possibility, she said softly. Very open. Caleb's smile was like dawn over the desert, warm and full of hope. He raised her hand and kissed her knuckles gently. Then I've got something to look forward to. Drawn by an unspoken pull, Emily stepped closer, her hand resting on his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat. May I? She whispered, looking up at him. In answer, Caleb lowered his head, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was tender yet electric, a promise of what could be. It was unlike anything Emily had imagined with James. This was raw, real, a connection forged in shared peril and trust. When they parted, breathless, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. I think James would approve, he said quietly. He wanted you happy. I think so too, Emily agreed, the gold ring on its chain around her neck warming against her skin, a reminder of James's love, now guiding her toward a new future. Part 9, A Life Reborn. 2 months later, on a crisp December morning, Emily stood before 20 eager faces in Redstone Creek's newly refurbished schoolhouse. Children from 5 to 15 filled the benches, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Good morning, children, she began, her voice clear and confident. I'm Miss Harper, and I'm thrilled to be your teacher. A small boy in the front raised his hand. Miss Harper, is it true you fought off outlaws and caught the men who killed Mr. Thornton? Emily smiled, expecting the question. The story had grown in the telling, a legend in the making. I helped bring some bad men to justice, she said. But today, we're going to explore something even more exciting, the power of learning. With education, you can shape the future of Redstone Creek. As she launched into her first lesson, Emily felt a certainty she hadn't known since arriving in Arizona. This was her place, not just in the schoolhouse but in the town itself. Redstone Creek was changing, new families arriving with the railroad's promise, the scars of Caldwell's corruption fading. After school, Emily worked with a foreman recommended by Marshall Hayes to revive Thornton's ranch, now called Harper's Hope. The land was thriving again, its cattle herd growing, its future bright. She had chosen not to sell, seeing the ranch as both James's legacy and her own path forward. 3 evenings a week, Caleb came to call, their courtship a quiet joy that raised eyebrows but felt right to them. They had faced death together. They could set their own pace for love. On Sundays, Emily rode to the cemetery overlooking the town, where she visited James's grave, sharing news of the ranch, the school, and the town's rebirth. You'd be proud, she told him one day, placing winter sage on his grave. The ranch is flourishing, and the railroad's route is set. Judge Ellis says its value has tripled. A cold breeze carried the scent of pine from the mountains. Caleb's been more than a friend, she continued. I think you knew that when you asked him to protect me. You chose well, James. As she prepared to leave, Emily touched the headstone. Thank you for bringing me west. It wasn't the life we planned, but it's one I cherish. Riding back, Emily saw the town transforming. Construction on the railroad station, new shops on Main Street, a new sheriff replacing Tucker. And riding toward her from Harper's Hope was Caleb, waving in greeting. Thought I'd find you here, he said, falling in beside her. Your Sunday ritual. It helps to tell him what's happening, Emily said. He'd be pleased to know I'm happy. They rode in silence, the winter sun low. Christmas is coming, Caleb said. The kids at school are buzzing about the town's celebration. They are thrilled, Emily said. Especially since Marshall Hayes is coming back for it. He's their hero. Ours too, Caleb said. Without him, Caldwell might have slipped away. As they neared town, Caleb guided his horse closer. I was hoping you'd join me for Christmas dinner at the ranch. Mrs. White Owl's planning a feast. She's quite fond of you, you know. Is she? Emily asked, surprised. Mrs. White Owl had warmed to her, but her reserve remained. She said you've got a spirit to match this land, Caleb said. High praise. I'd love to come, Emily said. Should I bring anything? Caleb's expression grew serious. Just yourself, and maybe an answer to a question I've been wanting to ask. Emily's heart quickened. What question? Instead of answering, Caleb reached into his pocket, pulling out a silver ring set with a turquoise stone. It was my mother's, he said. My father had it crafted for her by a Navajo silversmith. I've kept it, waiting for you, though I didn't know it then. Emily's breath caught. Caleb, I promised to court you properly, he said, and I will for as long as you want. But I want you to know my intentions are serious. When you're ready, this is yours. He pocketed the ring, giving her space to process. It's beautiful, Emily said softly. Like its future owner. Caleb's eyes warmed. As they rode into town side by side, Emily felt a profound sense of belonging. She had come west for a husband and found a community, a purpose, and a love born of shared trials. James had brought her to Arizona with a promise of a new life, fulfilled in ways neither could have imagined. The mail-order bride who arrived to find her groom dead had discovered not just protection from a half-Navajo rancher, but a home, a future, and a love forged in the crucible of danger, a love as enduring as the desert mountains. Part 10. A town reborn and a promise kept. As winter tightened its grip on Redstone Creek, the town buzzed with preparations for the Christmas celebration, a symbol of its renewal after the shadow of Caldwell's corruption. The schoolhouse, now Emily's domain, was adorned with pine boughs and paper snowflakes crafted by her students, their laughter echoing through the crisp air. The railroad station, nearing completion, promised to connect Redstone Creek to the wider world, drawing new settlers and merchants eager for opportunity. Yet for Emily Harper, the heart of this season lay not in the town's transformation, but in the quiet moments that defined her new life, a life she was building with purpose, community, and a love she had never anticipated. On the morning of the Christmas festival, Emily stood before her students, her blue dress neatly pressed, a sprig of holly pinned to her collar. The children, bundled in scarves and mittens, fidgeted with excitement, their eyes darting to the window where townsfolk gathered in the square. Today's lesson is short, Emily announced, her smile warm. We're going to join the celebration, but first, let's practice our carols. The town's counting on us to lead the singing. A cheer erupted, and the children launched into Silent Night, their voices uneven but earnest. Emily conducted them with a gentle hand, her heart swelling with pride. These were her students, her responsibility, and in their faces she saw the future of Redstone Creek, a future she was helping to shape. After the rehearsal, Emily led the children to the town square, where a towering pine, hauled from the nearby mountains, stood decorated with ribbons and tin stars. Booths offered hot cider, gingerbread, and hand-knitted goods, while a fiddler played lively tunes that drew couples to dance in the dust. The air was thick with the scent of pine and roasted chestnuts, a quintessentially American scene that reminded Emily of Philadelphia's winter markets, yet felt uniquely Western in its raw, communal spirit. Miss Harper, called Sarah, the small girl who had asked about outlaws on Emily's first day. Are you going to dance with Mr. Stone? Emily laughed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We'll see, Sarah. For now, let's get you all in place for the carols. As the children assembled near the tree, Emily spotted Caleb approaching, his limp nearly gone, his dark hair catching the sunlight. He wore a clean flannel shirt and a sheepskin coat, his presence drawing glances from the crowd, not all friendly, but fewer hostile than before. The trial had shifted perceptions. Caleb Stone, once an outsider, was now a hero to many in Redstone Creek. "You've got the whole town talking," Caleb said, his voice low and teasing as he reached her side. "The schoolteacher who took down a land baron and sings like an angel." Emily flushed, adjusting her holly pin. "I don't sing like an angel, and you know it. As for the rest, I had help." Caleb's eyes softened. "You carried more than your share, Emily. James would be proud." The mention of James brought a pang, but it was softer now, tempered by time and the life she was building. "I hope so," she said. "He brought me here, even if it wasn't the way we planned." Before Caleb could respond, Marshal Daniel Hayes strode over, his silver star gleaming. "Miss Harper, Mr. Stone," he greeted, tipping his hat. "The town owes you both a debt. This celebration wouldn't feel half as bright without justice served." "You're the one they're calling a hero," Emily said, nodding toward the children whispering excitedly about the marshal. "I hear you're staying for the festival." "Couldn't miss it," Hayes said with a grin. "Besides, I've got a telegraph from Judge Ellis. He's finalized the paperwork on your ranch, Miss Harper. Harper's Hope is yours, free and clear, and the railroad's already negotiating a lease for the water rights. You'll be a wealthy woman." Emily's breath caught. Wealth was a far cry from the modest life she'd known in Philadelphia, but it was the sense of security that mattered most, a foundation for the future she was choosing. "Thank you, Marshal," she said. "And thank Judge Ellis for me." Hayes tipped his hat again and moved off to greet the mayor, leaving Emily and Caleb alone. "Wealthy woman, huh?" Caleb said, a playful glint in his eye. "You'll have suitors lining up from here to Tucson." Emily laughed, nudging his arm. "I've got my hands full with one rancher already." The carols began, the children's voices rising in "O come, all ye faithful," and Emily stepped forward to lead them, her clear soprano blending with their youthful tones. Caleb watched from the sidelines, his expression a mix of pride and something deeper, something that made Emily's heart skip when their eyes met. After the singing, the festival continued with games and storytelling, the children scattering to join their families. Emily and Caleb wandered the square, sharing a mug of cider and exchanging quiet words. The townsfolk, once wary of her as an outsider, now greeted her warmly, their acceptance a testament to her role in their community's rebirth. As dusk fell, the square glowed with lanterns, and the fiddlers struck up a waltz. Caleb extended his hand. "May I have this dance, Miss Harper?" Emily hesitated, then placed her hand in his, the warmth of his touch grounding her. "You may, Mr. Stone." They moved to the music, their steps tentative at first, then surer as the rhythm took hold. The crowd faded, and for a moment it was just them, swaying under the Arizona stars. "You're not half bad at this," Emily teased, her cheek brushing his shoulder. "Had to learn for a barn dance years ago," Caleb said, his voice low. "Never thought I'd be dancing with someone like you." "Someone like me?" Emily asked, tilting her head. "Someone who sees me," he said simply. "Not the half-Navajo rancher, not the outsider, just me." Emily's throat tightened. "I see you, Caleb. I always will." The music ended, but they lingered, hands clasped, until Sarah's voice broke the spell. "Told you they'd dance," she called, giggling with her friends. Emily laughed, stepping back, but Caleb kept her hand in his. "Come to the ranch for dinner," he said. "Mrs. White Owl's been cooking all day, and she'll have my hide if you don't show." "I wouldn't miss it," Emily said, her heart light. The ride to the Stone Ranch was quiet, the night crisp and clear, the stars a glittering canopy above. Mrs. White Owl greeted them at the door, her stern face softening into a rare smile. "About time you showed up," she said to Emily. "Food's getting cold." The dining room was warm, the table laden with roast turkey, cornbread stuffing, mashed potatoes, and a pie that smelled of apples and cinnamon. It was a feast that spoke of care, of family, and Emily felt a pang of gratitude for this woman who had become a steadfast ally. "You've outdone yourself," Emily said, taking a seat beside Caleb. "Had to make sure you'd come back," Mrs. White Owl said, a twinkle in her eye. "Caleb's no good without you around." Caleb chuckled, shaking his head. "She's not wrong." The meal was filled with laughter and stories, Mrs. White Owl recounting tales of Caleb's boyhood mischief, Emily sharing memories of Philadelphia's snowy winters. It was a moment of normalcy, a glimpse of the life they could build together, a life rooted in love and shared history. After dinner, Caleb led Emily to the porch, where the night stretched vast and silent. "I've got something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out the turquoise ring, its silver band catching the moonlight. "I know I said I'd wait, but Christmas feels like the right time to ask." Emily's breath caught, her heart pounding. "Caleb." "I love you, Emily Harper," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "I want to build a life with you, here, on our ranches in this town, wherever you choose. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Emily's eyes, not of sorrow but of a joy so fierce it stole her breath. She thought of James, of the life they might have had, and felt his blessing in the warmth of the ring around her neck. But this was her future, her choice, her love. "Yes, Caleb," she said, her voice trembling. "Yes, I'll marry you." Caleb slipped the ring onto her finger, its fit perfect, as if it had been made for her. He pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was both tender and fierce, a vow sealed under the desert sky. When they parted, Emily rested her head against his chest, the steady beat of his heart her anchor. "I thought I came west for James," she whispered. "But maybe I was meant to find you." Caleb's arms tightened around her. "Maybe we were meant to find each other." They stood there, wrapped in each other's warmth, as the stars wheeled above, the future stretching before them like the open range, full of challenges but also promise. Redstone Creek, reborn from its trials, was their home, and together they would face whatever lay ahead, their love a beacon in the wilderness. Part 11, A Legacy of Hope. By spring, Redstone Creek had transformed into a bustling hub, the railroad station complete and trains arriving weekly, bringing settlers, goods, and news from the east. Emily's schoolhouse was thriving, her classroom now too small for the growing number of students, prompting plans for a new building funded by the ranch's profits. Harper's hope was a success. Its cattle herd doubled, its fields green with new growth under the care of a skilled foreman and Emily's keen oversight. Emily and Caleb's wedding was set for June, a simple ceremony planned at the ranch, with Mrs. White Owl overseeing the preparations with military precision. The town buzzed with excitement, the event a symbol of Redstone Creek's renewal, a union born from hardship, celebrated by a community that had embraced them both. On a warm May afternoon, Emily rode to the cemetery, a ritual she maintained to honor James. She dismounted near his grave, placing a bouquet of wildflowers, lupine and Indian paintbrush, on the headstone. "The ranch is thriving," she told him, her voice soft. "The school's growing, and the town's alive in a way I think you'd love. Caleb and I are getting married next month. I wish you could be there, but I feel you with us, in the way the land blooms, in the peace we've found." A breeze rustled the grasses, carrying the scent of sage. "I'm using some of the ranch's profits to start a scholarship fund," she continued. "For the children here, so they can study beyond Redstone Creek, maybe even go to college. It's your legacy, James and mine. Thank you for bringing me here." As she rode back, Emily saw Caleb waiting at the ranch's gate, his horse tethered nearby. He waved, his smile bright against the golden light. "Thought I'd join you for the ride home," he said, falling in beside her. "Home," Emily repeated, the word rich with meaning. Harper's Hope was her home, but so was the stone ranch and the town and the man beside her. "I like the sound of that." They rode in companionable silence, the landscape unfolding around them, rolling hills, distant mountains, the creek sparkling under the sun. This was their Arizona, wild and beautiful, a land that had tested them and forged them into something stronger. "I was thinking," Caleb said as they neared the ranch, "about combining our spreads after the wedding. Harper's Hope and Stone's Rest, one operation. It'd be a legacy for the next generation." Emily smiled, imagining children, theirs perhaps, running through these fields. "I like that idea. A legacy of hope built together." Caleb reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining. "Together," he said, his voice a vow. As they rode toward the ranch, the sun dipping low, their shadows stretched long across the earth, two figures, side by side, their paths now one. Redstone Creek lay ahead, a town reborn, its future bright with possibility. Behind them stretched the vast Arizona wilderness, and between them grew a love that had weathered danger and emerged unbreakable. Emily Harper, the mail-order bride who arrived to find her groom dead, had found far more: a home, a purpose, and a love as enduring as the mountains themselves. Part 12. A union forged in the heart of the West. June arrived in Redstone Creek, with a burst of wildflowers carpeting the hills and a warmth that softened the rugged edges of the Arizona landscape. The town hummed with anticipation for the wedding of Emily Harper and Caleb Stone, an event that had become a symbol of hope and renewal for a community emerging from its turbulent past. The Stone Ranch, adorned with garlands of sage and desert blooms, stood ready to host the ceremony, its sprawling fields and sturdy house a testament to the life Emily and Caleb were building together. On the morning of the wedding, Emily stood in her bedroom at Harper's Hope, gazing into a small, polished mirror. Her dress, sewn by her own hands from ivory lace sent by her sister in Oregon, shimmered softly in the sunlight filtering through the window. A crown of wildflowers, woven by Mrs. White Owl, rested atop her chestnut hair, and around her neck hung the gold ring James Thornton had left her, a quiet nod to the man whose love had brought her west, now a symbol of the past she honored as she stepped into her future. Her fingers brushed the turquoise ring on her left hand, Caleb's mother's ring, its silver band a promise fulfilled. Mrs. White Owl entered, her usually stern face softened by a rare, radiant smile. "You look like you belong here," she said, adjusting the crown with a gentle touch. "The lands claimed you, Emily Harper, just as it claimed Caleb's mother." Emily's eyes misted. "Thank you, Mrs. White Owl. For everything, your protection, your wisdom, your home." The older woman waved a hand, though her eyes gleamed with emotion. "Enough of that. The town's waiting, and Caleb's pacing like a caged coyote. Let's not keep him." They rode to the Stone Ranch in a wagon festooned with ribbons, driven by Emily's foreman, Tom Riley, who had become a trusted friend. Redstone Creek's residents lined the road, waving and cheering, their faces alight with pride for the woman who had faced down danger and the man who had stood by her side. Children from Emily's schoolhouse scampered alongside, tossing handfuls of petals, their laughter a melody that wove through the warm air. At the ranch, a simple wooden arch draped with white cloth stood in the meadow, framed by the distant mountains. Caleb waited beneath it, his dark hair tied back, his black suit tailored to his broad shoulders. His eyes, those deep pools that had once held wariness and pain, now shone with love and certainty as Emily approached. Marshal Daniel Hayes stood as efficient, his silver star polished for the occasion, while Judge Ellis, Emily's lawyer and now a friend, served as witness alongside Mrs. White Owl. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt, the words spoken with the weight of their shared journey. "Emily Harper," Caleb said, his voice steady but thick with emotion, "you came to this land a stranger, but you've become its heart and mine. I vow to stand by you, to build with you, to love you through every storm and sunrise." Emily's voice trembled as she replied, "Caleb Stone, you gave me shelter when I had none, courage when I faltered, and a home I never expected. I vow to walk with you, to share your dreams, and to love you with all that I am." They exchanged rings, hers the turquoise band, his a simple silver one she had chosen from a Tucson jeweler. Hayes pronounced them husband and wife, and as Caleb drew Emily into a kiss, the crowd erupted in cheers, hats tossed skyward, the fiddler striking up a lively reel. The kiss was a promise, a sealing of their bond forged in danger and tempered by trust, a moment that felt as vast and enduring as the Arizona sky above. The celebration spilled into the evening, the ranch alive with music, dancing, and tables laden with food: roast beef, cornbread, beans spiced with chili, and a towering cake baked by Mrs. Donovan from the hotel. Emily and Caleb danced under lanterns strung between the trees, their laughter mingling with the crowds. Sarah, the schoolgirl, led a group of children in a spirited jig, while Marshal Hayes shared stories of his frontier adventures, the townsfolk hanging on every word. As the stars emerged, Emily and Caleb slipped away to the porch, the music a soft hum behind them. The ranch stretched before them, Harper's hope and Stone's rest now one operation, their boundaries united as their lives were. "Happy?" Caleb asked, his arm around her waist. "More than I thought possible," Emily said, leaning into him. "I came here for a husband I barely knew, expecting a life I'd imagined through letters. Instead, I found you, this town, this land. It's more than I could have dreamed." Caleb kissed her forehead. "You've changed this place, Emily. Redstone Creek was a shadow of itself before you came. Now it's alive, growing because of you. And you," she said, turning to face him, "you showed me what it means to fight for what matters, to build something lasting." They stood in silence, the night wrapping them in its quiet embrace. In the distance, the creek that ran through their land sparkled under the moonlight, its waters a lifeline that had drawn greed and danger, but now promised prosperity. The scholarship fund Emily had established was already sending its first student, a bright girl named Clara, to a teaching college in Flagstaff, a legacy of James's dream and Emily's commitment to the future. "I was thinking," Emily said, her voice soft, "about naming the new schoolhouse wing after James. The Thornton Wing, for the man who brought me here." Caleb nodded, his eyes warm. "He'd like that. And he'd like knowing you're happy." "I am," Emily said, her hand finding his. "With you, with this life, with everything we'll build together." The music swelled, calling them back to the celebration, but they lingered a moment longer, their silhouettes blending into one against the starlit sky. Redstone Creek, once a place of secrets and betrayal, was now their home, its people their family. The wilderness that had tested them had also shaped them, forging a love that would endure as long as the mountains stood. Emily Harper Stone, the mail-order bride who had arrived to find her groom dead, had discovered a destiny far greater, a community reborn, a purpose fulfilled, and a love that had weathered the fiercest storms. With Caleb by her side, she stepped back into the light of the celebration, ready to embrace the years ahead, their future a canvas as vast and vibrant as the Arizona frontier itself.